Okay, so there is a new individual emerging that I want to talk about. His name is Timbox, and he is being touted as being the next Chris Chan. The Cracked Rack channel, whose videos I viewed as they relate to the current situation with Chris Chan, just did a video about him, and so I want to talk about this. First of all, I'm using the name Timbox. That's what he goes by. I assume that's his real name. This is not in any way, shape, or form an advocacy of any kind of abuse at all whatsoever, and far from that just being me covering my own bases. This is very much going to be a discussion of how to prevent the next Chris Chan and the Chris Chan after that and the Chris Chan after that, etc., etc., etc. So then also, I should clarify, as always, that when I talk about these issues, I myself am on the autism spectrum. I am much, much higher functioning than someone like Chris Chan or Timbox, but it needs to be discussed. This issue, as I discuss it, needs to be discussed by someone that's had some experience in this area, and there are issues with autism that affect my life, affect my daily life, that I have to be on top of. So, so with all of that said, the parallels between Chris Chan and Timbox are striking. Like Chris Chan, Timbox is a low-functioning autistic that was nonverbal as a child. Like Chris Chan, he is extremely easily provoked into anger and other wildly emotional outbursts. Like Chris Chan, he has no ability to distinguish between abuse and constructive criticism. Like Chris Chan, he has no ability to internalize constructive criticism and take conscious action for his own self-improvement. Like Chris Chan, he his major focus of endeavor is creating cartoons that are cartoons and comics of his own creation that are derived from existing intellectual properties. Like Chris Chan, he seems to have no understanding of intellectual property. Like Chris Chan, he seems to think that he has delusions of grandeur of becoming successful by having the companies who create these properties pay him large sums of money to create these things that he wants to create and everything. And like Chris Chan, he has he has a lot of very bizarre, aberrant, disturbing sexual proclivities that he has no self-regulatory ability to stop himself from talking about them and publicizing them on the internet and that kind of thing. So it's interesting to me. I don't want to say too much about Timbox, because what I want to talk about really is the situation, the larger situation sociologically that's unfolding. Because here's the thing. When I first did my commentary, the first of my commentaries on Chris Chan, I said that there were more people like Chris Chan out there, that I, in my own life, a few years ago, encountered a very Chris Chan-like individual whose caregivers were hoping I would be able to make some kind of positive difference in his life, and I had to ultimately establish boundaries because I'm not qualified to do that. But I've encountered someone like this in my own life, and it was very disturbing encountering this person in my own life. And so these people exist. And one of the things I said in my original video commentary on this was that these people should not have internet access. They should not be able to interact with online forums and online communities and fandoms or anything like that, or social media. They should have no access to it whatsoever. And a lot of people wrote in and said, well, gosh, that seems very severe. That seems very cruel in a way. Here's the thing. Think about what the internet occupies sociologically for us now. Would you allow a low-functioning autistic person like Chris Chan or Timbox, if you were their caregiver, would you allow them to go into a singles bar unaccompanied? Would you allow them to go into a strip club or a nightclub unaccompanied, a brothel unaccompanied, a crack den an opium den or a crack house unaccompanied? Would you allow them to go hang out with a local street gang? Would you allow them to go to an extremist political rally? Would you allow them to go to the meetings of a local hate group? Would you allow them to go to a casino or other house of gambling? Would you, on and on and on? Would you allow them to get involved with swingers clubs or BDSM fetish clubs or anything like that? No, most likely. If you cared about them, or if you cared about them and took your job seriously, you would realize that this is a low-functioning person. Low-functioning, meaning they don't have the cognitive ability to interact with to interact in these situations in a safe, informed, and consensual manner. That they're not capable of that. So don't let them get involved in the internet equivalent of that. And people like Chris Chan and Timbox need to be in assisted living. They need to have professional care. They need to have people taking care of them and monitoring their behavior 24 hours a day. Because they cannot interact with the outside world without getting in trouble. And predatory people know how to seek out individuals, and vulnerable individuals, and victimize them. And so they need to have their behavior extremely monitored and extremely controlled by people who are legally responsible for them. And again, there are certain situations where it has to be established that a person can't give meaningful consent for the things that I just described. The very act of the person taking part in those things constitutes that person being taken advantage of. Again, we are talking about people with the minds of children. They are not functioning on an adult level. But here's the thing, more so than that, before we can ever start to have a discussion about what such individuals should or should not be allowed to do by society at large for their own sake, we have to establish something else, and that is that we need to establish a diagnostic criteria for a lolcow. It needs to be understood. The concept of being a lolcow needs to be understood as a public health crisis and as a public health issue that needs desperately to be understood and examined. We need mental health professionals to come in and establish an objective criteria for diagnosing a potential lolcow. And this is actually not difficult to do, because what I just described can serve as a very useful criteria for diagnosing that, the basis of a diagnostic criteria. The internet itself is able to diagnose lolcows. They know the symptoms. They know what to look for. We just haven't formalized it into the DSM for mental health professionals to refer to. But think about it. I mean, why are we so easily able to say that Timbox is the next Chris Chan? I mean, think about it. The Venn diagram between Timbox and Chris Chan is almost a single circle. Because we know what the criteria is. We know what to look for. Individuals who are on the autism spectrum, or likely on the autism spectrum, who are incapable of self-criticism, have delusions of grandeur, lack certain self-regulatory capacities, are extroverted and attention-seeking in a toxic attention-seeking manner. All of these things and more, the internet already knows what the criteria is for diagnosing a lolcow. We just have to make it official. And people have got to know what these individuals are. And if you think I'm being harsh by suggesting that their internet access be extremely limited, I would turn it back around on you and say, what possible good is being denied these people and the world at large by restricting their internet access? These are not the Sheldon Coopers of the world that are getting on the internet to work out the unified field theory or string theory or something like that. These are people who are, I'm sorry to say it, but they are very low functioning individuals who don't really have anything positive to derive from I didn't want to say anything to contribute, because they could hopefully find some contributing role in society, but they don't have any positive use to derive from the internet, to derive from from fandom interaction or anything like that. And they need their access needs to be regulated, and it needs to be controlled. Otherwise, we are going to keep on seeing more Chris Chans. And I'm sorry, but predatory people know what to look for. And you know what? I am a high-functioning autistic person. I'm capable of understanding a whole lot more about the world than these guys do. But even I have to have a conscious criteria that I go through when I am evaluating a new person in my life, because I have been taken advantage of so many times by the people, by just toxic narcissists, sociopathic people, predatory people like that. I've been taken advantage of because I don't catch the obvious things that would be naturally obvious to other people. I just don't see them automatically. And I have to have a conscious criteria that I apply when I evaluate people. And if somebody trips one of my red flags, I have to sit down with people that I trust and say, okay, they tripped this red flag because of this, this, and this. What do you think? And get them to evaluate it, because I might be interpreting it incorrectly, sorry. So I'll give you an example. It's close to a year ago now, I was started seeing a woman who worked as a day trader. And so I really liked her a lot, and I was interested in dating her, but the fact that she was a day trader and she offered to teach me how to day trade and get set up doing it, okay, that set off a red flag with me. And so I went to a friend of mine and said, okay, I know that I've heard that day traders will try to swindle new recruits into the game because they like having as many suckers involved as possible. And I worry that she's one of these people that's trying to swindle me into it. And so my friend said, okay, first of all, does she have any kind of professional persona as somebody that teaches you how to get into the game? Is that where does she make her money off of teaching you how to get into the day trading game? No. Okay, so that's that. Has she made teaching you day trading a precondition for your relationship? No. Okay, we'll pay attention to how often she brings it up and see. And so I paid attention, and sure enough, she didn't really bring it up unless I made it a point to talk to her about it. So I was able to safely assume that this was just her, she did day trading as her job, and was just willing to teach me about it if I was interested, and start going from there. And then, of course, she dropped me like a hot rock when she found out that I was autistic. But anyway, moving forward. So that's the kind of point I'm trying to make. I, as a high-functioning autistic individual, have to go through all of that. They, as low-functioning autistic individuals, have no capacity for that. So that's the point I'm trying to make here. And we have got to get a diagnostic criteria established professionally for what it is to be a lolcow. And I hate to use, there needs to be a better expression, a non-derogatory expression, but it needs to be understood. And, I tout myself as being kind of an autism anti-hero, because I'm, as an autistic person, this is one area where even by the new rules of political correctness, where people outside of a given demographic it becomes verboten for people outside of a given demographic to talk about issues related to that demographic because, oh my God, you don't know what it's like to be them or something like that. Well, this is an issue where I can even speak based on and criticize based on the newfangled politically correct concept of how we're supposed to, people from certain demographics are supposed to talk about those demographics. I think that's bullshit. But anyway, what I say is I'm qualified even on that level. And because of that, I call myself an autism anti-hero because so much of what's said about by the autism community is hurting the individuals that they claim to be, that they claim to want to help. I am so very disgusted with the way the autism community carries on with this whole thing of like, oh, you're autistic, you're a special person with a special identity and and you're a very special person. Fuck you, you have no idea what it's like. I mean, how dare you tell me that this is condescend to me to tell me that word special is something other than a smack in the face, something other than a Band-Aid on cancer, something other than pouring syrup on rotten meat. I mean, I hate that expression. I hate condescend. I hate that kind of condescension. People who have disabilities usually know that they have disabilities, and they don't like you condescending to them about it. Don't talk, it's just like I've known people who are physically handicapped who will say, hey, don't talk down to me by telling me that I'm specially abled or differently abled or something like that. Fuck you. Tell me that I am handicapped. Tell me that I'm disabled because that's what I am. Stop talking down to me. And the problem with autism, Autism Speaks is a bad organization. I don't endorse them for a lot of reasons. But one thing that everybody criticizes them for that I have no problem with is that they talk about autism like it's a problem. It is a problem. And it is a problem. It is a problem that affects how children grow up, that affects families, it affects parents, it affects siblings, it affects everyone in the family, everybody that has to help these individuals. And it is a problem that needs to be overcome. There's a famous Autism Speaks commercial that frames autism as this horrible thing that can tear apart families and be this real devastating problem. I have no problem with that because that's the reality of it. Stop pretending that it's this special, wonderful, magical little thing. Because guess what? When you communicate that message to autists, there's no research on this, but I think when you communicate that message to autistic kids, that they're special, wonderful, magical Peter Pan little fairy, not fairy in the gay sense, but fairy in the literal sense, Peter Pan, forever eternal, Tinkerbell little boys that, magical fancy little boys that get to be children forever and live in this magical Candyland la universe, that bullshit, when you push that bullshit on them, you end up with Timbox. You end up with Chris Chan. Okay? Look, I have, on that shelf over there, I have a collection of Charlie Brown figurines, a Bob Bomb from Mario, and a Rainbow Dash figurine. All right? I have my own inner child fascination with certain childhood age IPs that I've never grown out of. And in the case of Rainbow Dash, one that I picked up as an adult. But you know what? I understand the context in which that functions. I understand that I am not a child. I understand that my appreciation, with the exception of Peanuts, because that's targeted for all ages. But in the case of things like MLP, I understand that I'm outside the target demographic for that. I get it. these people can't comprehend that. And that's the problem. That's the problem with this. I understand that I'm an adult and that I need to take on adult responsibilities for my life. And would like to. There are a lot of difficulties that I run into, like what I described earlier. But I get it. I get that. I get where childhood stops and adulthood starts. I understand that. I understand that taking responsibility for my own life is not an unreasonable burden. That's not to say that it's not difficult. That's not to say that I don't get overwhelmed. That's not to say that I don't have a lot of times where I'm like, fuck this, I give up, I don't understand it. But I consciously understand the difference in what's going on versus people who are stuck in a state of childhood and are unable to pull themselves of childlike naivete and unable to pull themselves out of it. I think what we need to get through to individuals like this, we need to reframe adulthood, and rather than indulging them in being children forever, we need to reframe adulthood in a way that they can understand. And, again, I hate to be one of these people that's like, back in the old days, it was better. But go look, for example, there's a movie, there's a book called Flowers for Algernon that's phenomenal, that you should read. It will break your heart. And there's an excellent movie adaptation, too, called Charlie, starring Cliff Robertson. And the idea is that there is a man, a mentally handicapped man. They say that he is retarded, which obviously is, again, politically incorrect nowadays. A political correctness that I'm willing to observe because I understand that that's become an epithet. But that statement's become an epithet. But he is a mentally retarded man who is given an operation that allows him to become not only a normally functioning individual, but all the way into a just super genius level of just astronomical levels of super genius. And I won't give away the ending if you haven't read it yet. But anyway, the point being is that we see in the beginning of that how he's being cared for. The care that he's being given is not towards indulging him in a lifetime of eternal childhood behavior, but working towards helping him understand the adult world in a way that will allow him to function to some small degree as an adult, to take on an adult identity. And that's something that we've really lost. The movie adaptation of Charlie begins with a shot of him running around a playground playing with the children. And, obviously he doesn't comprehend the issue with that. Not obviously, but for someone like me, high functioning autistic, I'm not going to go start playing on a playground with a bunch of children. Me and my buddies, if we're walking home from the bar one night or something and there's an empty playground, we might run around on it for fun, when there's no other kids around. But I understand not getting on the playground with the kids. He doesn't. And that's the thing. We need to somehow create a context of adulthood that these people can understand and embody. And I think a lot of what it comes down to is that adulthood seems impossible. Adulthood seems impossible, and it seems impossible for most adults. But adulthood seems impossible and incomprehensible, and sitting around sitting at the television, eating sugary snacks and watching cartoons is like a safe comfort zone kind of thing. And I will say, as an autistic, to a certain extent, I can relate to that. I can relate to the feeling of it feeling like you're being because especially autistics are very sensitive to certain light and color patterns and that sort of thing, that cartoons, the large scale color washes that cell drawn animations and that sort of thing tend to cater to. Because autistics are soothed by that sort of thing, and because of that, watching something like a cartoon, like a Bugs Bunny or whatever, something like that, or a My Little Pony, that can feel very soothing and very comforting to them because they're soothed by those color patterns. I think on a base level, a base cognitive level, they feel like the mean adults are trying to pull them away from the TV and force them out into this chaotic, unpleasant world where everything's loud and disorienting. And they don't want to, they recoil. And that's what I think is happening. Because that part of it, that wanting to recoil from the loud, crazy, chaotic adult world, because everything seems confusing and overpowering and overwhelming, I can understand that. I can navigate the adult world much, much, much better than they can. But I understand that. I get that. I totally understand that, that aspect of it. And I think that that's a very real part of what's happening. I think that I've talked about it before, that I think a lot of times the parents shut down. I think from what I've seen, and I've seen the parents of these kinds of individuals in different situations throughout my adult life, that, very often the parents shut down. What I see over and over again personally is dad gets fed up with the kid because he's mad at his kid because his kid thinks he gets to have childhood forever, and so he kind of shuts down and gives up. And mom thinks, oh, my sweet little baby boy is never going to grow up. I don't have to let go. And obviously a mother in that situation usually will not come right out, or a father will not come right out and say that, but their behavior embodies that and models that over and over again, that's what's going on in the backs of their minds. So that's the problem. We need to identify these individuals, because I think what happens is there is a lifetime of experiences that leads them up to becoming a lolcow. And that lifetime of experiences is something that the internet can figure out. We've already diagnosed it, the internet's already diagnosed it, done all of the research for it. They've already figured out what the diagnostic criteria is, to the point that you could probably take if you took, it's amazing, you could probably take the biggest internet troll bullies on the internet and use them as professional consults in the course of diagnosing what it is to be a lolcow. Just like my dad was a computer programmer before he retired, and when he the companies he worked for, they would bring in computer hackers. They would hire computer hackers to come in and try to break through their firewalls and everything like that, and try to fuck up their software and everything to find, and consult on it, because these are the people, even though these are people that are doing awful things out there, you bring them in so that because they have the expert opinion, they have the expert in-field, on-the-ground research knowledge that you need. So you really could get a hold of the people that are the great trolls of the internet and use their knowledge, absorb and document their knowledge about these people, because they're going to be the first. They have already done so much of the research for you. And so I think that has got to be crucial, and that's got to be to the forefront. I don't know how to advocate for these kinds of things. I don't know who you talk to or what. I see a therapist. Maybe I should talk to him about it. I don't know. But who could be doing this research and getting this out there so that we can try to identify these traits and we can figure out who these individuals are and head it off at the pass before it gets to the point of them becoming the next Chris Chan or anything like that. And the last thing I'm going to say is to Timbox. If you should see this video, Tim, listen to me. I'm not going to try to reason with you. I'm not going to try to get anything across to you except this. Get the fuck off the internet. I know you are hearing what I'm saying and you're thinking that I'm being mean to you, or you're thinking that I'm being unreasonable or cruel. I am not. I swear to God, a God that I believe in, that I am saying this to you because I don't want there to be another Chris Chan, and I don't want you to be the next Chris Chan. I don't want you to be victimized. Get the fuck off the internet. You don't need to be on it. Stop. Just get off. Period.